Okay, so that was the character. So now we go on to the next guy, and that would be, let me see here. So integer, whole numbers, double, decimal numbers, character, one character. And then we get into the special data type string, a sequence of characters. Okay. That existed in Python too. Before I forget, let me check this in before I forget. Let me see here. Maybe undo last commit. Let me go here. And let me go to main. And let me just use it in main, right? So that we can say we used main. So include IOStream. Sorry, I'll do this quickly. Using cout. And then we will say include char.age, and then we'll say auto result equals get ASCII value letter A, and then we'll say cout result, right? So I purposely used auto so that you can see that we can use it, right? So cout result. Let me see, what is the complaint? Integer. Okay. Let me pause the recording because I don't want to resume. I'll just run it and then I'll commit it altogether. So running terminal. We used it in main. I don't think I used the other ones in main, but that's okay. Oh yeah, auto, I did use it, right? So okay. Okay, so value 65, no surprise there, right? So if you're still like, what, 65? Capital A in memory is stored as the value 65. That's what that means. So let me commit this. Commit. So now everything will go as one unit, and I will send it on to my repository. Okay, it should be there now. Okay, so now let's go on to strings, right? So let me bring this here. So the string is a special data type. It's known like it's a special kind of data type. So hopefully you were exposed to classes in Python, and if you weren't, then just try to understand this piece as best you can, right? String data type. This is just an introduction to the string data type. Later on, we'll take a deep dive. Okay, so assuming we have, this is main, and then we have string lang equals C++. Okay, assuming we have that. Okay, so first piece is what is string? How did they create the string, right? So this is not a class diagram, a stack diagram. Instead, it's like we're looking at a class diagram, and the name of this class is string. Okay, so in here, the programmers, they probably used a character variable, and maybe, I don't know what they named it, but I'm assuming sequence, right? Or in my world, it's sequence. So they created a sequence, and then they were able to store a list of characters. Okay, we'll take a deep dive into how this works in the future, but all I'm saying is someone wrote code to represent the concept of a sequence of characters in memory, and that code is in the string class. And maybe they created some functions for the string class, maybe like the size of the string, and let me go back here. Maybe they create a function like get size or something like that, or size, right? That returns the size of the string and other functions. But someone wrote code that helps the computer know like how to work with a sequence of characters, and to us it's known as a string data type. Okay, now we can be like, okay, so a string is a sequence of characters. At least we have like a vague very high level idea, oops, where are you here, of how developers created the concept of a string using the class structure. And if you're still kind of like, what, class? When we get to strings and midway through the semester, then we'll take a deep dive. Well, actually, no, like after functions, we'll talk about strings. That'll like help you close the gap. And then after classes, object-oriented programming lectures, we'll get into memory management. Then we'll take a deep dive to see how they really created the string class using code. Then they'll close the gap. You'll be like, okay, so now I kind of know what he was talking about. For now, just assume a block of code in a class that helps us use a sequence of characters as a string. Okay, so assuming this was main, right? Only this piece is in the main program. So main, I'm not gonna write the main function. So then how is this stored in memory? Recall when I introduced stack, I said that most simple data types are stored here, like int, double, and character are in the stack, and I demonstrated that already. And then on the heap or the free store, which we've not used yet, we're going to introduce it today just to show you how a string is loaded onto the heap, okay? So if we jump back here, then we're like, oh, so now for this one, we're going to use stack and heap, yes. So if we have stack here, and then we have heap, and we'll have some memory. I purposely use like only 3 characters because I don't want to create a very confusing diagram over here, right? Or big block of diagrams. If we understand how 3 strings or characters for a string are loaded onto a heap, we'll know how a larger string is loaded onto memory, okay? So we have stack here. And then we would get a block for main when our program starts running. And this is the only variable that we have in the function. We don't have anything else, right? So we're like, okay, so main. So then here. However, I just told you that strings are stored on the heap. So then the question would be, well, then what is stored here, right? Assuming we have like some large memory address that ends with the value 100. And on this side, we have some memory address y that ends with the value 100. Completely made up numbers, okay? So at least we know, you told me that C++ characters are stored on the heap. And remember, heap is random, so we'll pick some random block, assuming it was here, so C++. Okay, and then 101. 102, right? We're jumping by 1 because we're dealing with characters. So this would be address Y102. So how do we tell this block that its children are over here? By storing the beginning address for the first character over here, and then we would denote the relation with an arrow. So we'll learn what this is in the future, but for now, at least we get an understanding with a diagram how strings are stored in memory. And right now I will ask if there's questions here.
These recordings are stored on Blackboard, right?
Yeah, yeah. So you'll see a link to video lectures, right? So
Okay, gotcha.
go here. If you follow this link, it'll take you to the playlist on YouTube.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Okay. Actually, I was on OneNote. Okay. Any other questions here? Okay. So for quizzes, what you may see, you may see a question that's like shows you a diagram. C++ may be on the heap, right? Like this sequence might be here, or sometimes I put it over here and then it's a true-false question. Like if I show you this diagram, then I would ask, is this a correct representation of how a string is stored in memory? Yes, in this case it is, because that's how they're stored. But if you would see only stack and then you would see C++ here like on each block, and I would ask you, is this a correct representation of how a string is stored in memory, then the answer would have to be false, because the characters are stored on the heap always. So don't forget that. Okay, so now let's go back and let me see here. Introduction. Okay, I want to bring this diagram back. This is how C++, the structure of C++ is, right? So we can assume that all this big box here is C++, but it's broken down into two main blocks. Out of the box C++, meaning you do not need any include statements. You can just start using C++. You can use like the keyword if, while, for, and data types like int, double, and character. But notice over here, you have string. It's in the C++ standard library block. And the rule is that if it's over here, then you need an include, right? You need an include. And then you need to help C++ with the namespace. That's the rule. We should tell you, oh, if I want to use string, I need some include statement, and then I need to help C++ narrow down the scope to where it can find the string. The answer is yes, and it'll always be in this namespace, start namespace, okay? So knowing this, let's go and create an example that creates a string variable for us. So we go here. If this is too elementary for you, then I'm sorry, right? We have to cover it. I still didn't commit this sucker. Thought I did. Let me see here. Character main use. I have to put two links on that video. No, I missed that. Okay. Okay, let me close this one and then we go on to string. So we go to string. And we're not going to create a function here. We want to go to main, and it's just how do I create a string variable? That's all we want to learn here. When we get to the string chapter, we'll learn more about them. Here is just kind of like, okay, so how do I create a string? Rule number one, you need an include statement, and they made it easy enough for us. It's string. Let's say the include. Rule number two, the using statement, string. Now when I create a string variable or object, that's how I do it. I need to output something, so I'll say include iostream cout whatever value lang is holding, and one more step, right? Narrow down the namespace for cout using .cout. And now that squiggly red underscore goes away. I should be able to run my program now. Nothing fancy, we're just creating the string lang with value C++ and we're outputting it. C++. So if I just show you this code, right, and just try to explain, well, yeah, it's a special data type. That's not really telling you much, right? But hopefully now with like the explanation I just gave you, then you're like, oh, like I didn't know that, but now I do. Questions here? Maybe the question is this how strings work in Python? And yes, I just didn't bring it up because they were more concerned that you learn very basic fundamentals for programming and not like how memory and code are related to each other, working together. Questions? So 4 data types, but you see like the underlying infrastructure to work with them is a lot, right? So hopefully that helps. Let me stop